China is very willing to send out hundreds of thousands of people throughout the world to get information and intelligence and technology.
They have a version of the F-35, which is almost an exact copy that was stolen.
Zhang Xialong was an engineer.
It had access to the project code with the autonomous driving project.
If Tesla and Apple can be hit, then your smaller to medium-sized companies, if they think that they're not going to be hacked, then they're deluding themselves.
We needed to move as quickly as we could. We set up an undercover operation.
It was much more than we ever expected because every project they showed was for the Chinese government or for the Chinese Navy.
The Chinese government likes to operate in a gray area.
They've transitioned to a much more aggressive espionage campaign against the United States, a whole-of-society attack.
Xi Jinping has one goal in mind, to be number one.
Beginning in the 1970s, the forefront of computer and software developments in the United States has been in California. From Palo Alto down into the heart of Los Angeles in Southern California, that's the epicenter. Aerospace industry, burgeoning computer companies, subsequently the development of Google, the emergence and reemergence of Apple. It's the center of innovation.
3, 2, 1. With respect to Apple, they have operations all over the world. They have manufacturing facilities in China to facilitate building some of the most awesome technology that we've seen on the planet Earth. But the technology, the research, development, ideations, the thoughts come out of the Apple headquarters facility in California. And if you are a spy entity, that's where you want to be.
My name is Kathy Stearman. I spent over 26 years with the FBI. Most recently, I was the legal attaché in China, covering all of China and Mongolia. The legal attaché is the head of the FBI office overseas. So let's look at different types of threats to a corporation or an organization such as the FBI. A cyber threat can come from the outside. An insider threat is someone who is actually working on the inside of that corporation, and they become a spy for whoever is directing them from the outside.
As concerns about our environment grow, more focus is being put on the development of alternative fuels.
Project Titan began around 2014 when Apple set out to build an electric vehicle.
Because it's a high-level, top-secret project, Apple only hints at its development.
What is it about the car business that is ripe for disruption? That whether it's Apple or whether it's, frankly, Google or Uber or everybody else?
When I look at the automobile, what I see is that software becomes an increasingly important component of the car of the future. So it would seem like that there will be massive change in that industry, massive change.
The groundbreaking new tech for Project Titan requires the best minds in the field. Apple hires over 1,000 automobile experts, engineers, and developers, and houses them in a secret location near the company's Cupertino headquarters. Thirty-year-old Chinese-born hardware engineer Zhang Xialong is one of these new employees. With 4 years' experience at Marvell Semiconductor, he has the right qualifications for the job. At Apple, he'll be designing and testing circuit boards for the new electric cars. Over the next year, Project Titan evolves from electric to fully autonomous vehicles.
We're focusing on autonomous systems. And clearly one purpose of autonomous systems is self-driving cars. There are others. And we sort of see it as the mother of all AI projects.
It would be realistic to say that in this century, the company that masters truly autonomous vehicles, it'll probably be one of the most startling advancements economically in our history.
Research conducted by Morgan Stanley indicates that self-driving cars will save the economy $488 billion in annual savings from reducing traffic accidents, and another $158 billion in reduced fuel costs. Three years into the development of Project Titan, Zhang is considered one of the team's most valued employees.
That as an engineer involved with the autonomous driving project, the portion of Project Titan, he had access to the code, the project code.
Zhang has been handed the keys to the kingdom. When Zhang's wife gives birth, he takes paternity leave and travels back to China with his family. When he returns to work, he comes with some sad news. He will have to resign.
He first told his employers that his mother was sick and he needed to return to China.
During the meeting, Zhang's supervisor becomes suspicious and asks a representative from Apple's new product security division to join them. Upon further questioning, Zhang offers up new information.
He announced that he was going to China to work for a competitive car company.
The company is a Chinese startup called Xiaopeng Motors Technologies, or X Motors, co-founded by mobile internet entrepreneur He Xiaopeng. His company, UC Web, had just been acquired by the e-commerce giant Alibaba, which at the time is the biggest merger in the country's history.
With the revelation of his departure from Apple, and especially as they learned that he was going to work for a competitor, Apple's security team closely examined his network activity and also his phone.
They begin a deep dive into Zhang's activities and discover a breach on their surveillance videos. He's seen going into the autonomous vehicle lab on a Saturday and leaving with a box full of hardware. Apple immediately informed the FBI.
So the FBI is the lead counterintelligence organization, agency in the United States to prevent and deter intelligence collection in the United States. as well as to prosecute from a law enforcement perspective those who get caught doing that.
FBI, open up!
The FBI raid Zhang's apartment and bring him in for questioning.
I personally did not work on that case, but what they had found that Zhang Xiaolong's activity on his computers and on the project had multiplied 1,000-fold in the last few days before he decided to tell them that he was actually going to leave. So once Apple started doing forensic analysis on his activity a few days prior to his saying that he was going to go back to China to visit a parent, he had downloaded 40 gigabytes of data.
They could tell that he had taken a tranche of 40 gigabytes and using AirDrop had simply transferred it wirelessly to his wife's laptop. And this would have been in violation of every security protocol that Apple had in place just to stop an employee from accidentally doing something like this. There is no conceivable justification as an employer to have one of your most prized secrets downloaded and then transferred to an unsecure computer of another person.
When faced with the evidence, Zhang admits to downloading data on his wife's laptop, but says it's for personal use only. He's released, and the FBI continue their investigation. 10 days later, Zhang is at the San Jose airport buying a ticket to China.
They found out that he had a ticket to fly to China, and Apple alerted the FBI to this, and the FBI arrested him at the San Jose airport before he could board.
His motivation appears to have been to relocate to China and go to work for X Motors that would have benefited tremendously from the acquisition of this code.
When Zhang appears in federal court, he pleads not guilty and is released on a $300,000 bond.
So the theft of trade secrets now is a criminal as well as a civil crime. And an individual can be prosecuted criminally, and then they could also be prosecuted civilly. But fortunately, the update to the laws begins to put teeth to try to begin the hemorrhage of trade secrets that is damaging us economically.
If convicted, Zhang faces a maximum sentence of 10 years in prison and a fine of $250,000. Deemed a flight risk, Zhang is ordered to wear a GPS monitor while he awaits trial.
So in this case, it doesn't matter if the theft he is being accused of was solely to benefit an electric vehicle startup, or if they saw greater potential to benefit the Chinese military. The answer is the government of China benefits either way. The U.S. is the loser.
Six months later, Apple is hit once again.
Chen Zhong is another Chinese engineer who worked on Project Titan for Apple on their autonomous vehicle development. Another colleague who worked on the project saw Chen photographing his Apple laptop. And so they reported it to Apple. Apple started doing a forensic analysis, and they found that he had downloaded thousands of documents regarding Project Titan.
Like Zhang Xialong, Chen uses the same excuse. He has to return to China to visit a sick relative.
They cut off his access to the project and subsequently found out that he had a ticket to go back to China, and he was arrested also at the San Jose airport before he could get on the flight to China. I'm not sure if Chen Zhong would have gotten caught if One of his colleagues hadn't seen him photographing his laptop, which tells me that Apple actually has an insider threat program. When you're working on a top secret project like that, you have a special training program that they're given to pay attention to anything that looks unusual to them. And obviously, a colleague photographing a top secret project would be one of those things that alerted them. But to me, it just seems really odd that 6 months after the first person was arrested, Zhang Xialong, Zhang was arrested stealing trade secrets from the same project.
The Chinese government likes to operate in a gray area. They want their companies to be successful, they want economic clout, and they also want to build up their military. Establishing motive in these cases, it's in that gray area. It's so difficult to prove, and it's an area that China thrives in. It probably doesn't matter whether he is working for himself, for private industry, or for China as the greater China. Theft is theft. The damage to the U.S. and our economy is the same regardless of what its end use.
So the impact of that theft, and I would proffer to you, and I would say Apple doesn't have an electronic vehicle right now. And if they did back then, and we did not have the insider threat at Apple, maybe Apple has an electronic vehicle. Maybe they've built 10 factories around the U.S. and they employ 100,000 people to work in those factories. So the long-term existential threat to that Apple insider potentially is not having those factories and employees working to build those vehicles. That's the long-term threat for economic espionage from the Communist Party of China.
Apple isn't the only company working on autonomous driving software. As the race to market begins, the technology needed to get to the starting block first has become critical. It's also created an uptick of trade secret thefts, especially from spies on the inside.
Tesla is an industry leader in both electric vehicles and their emerging autopilot and autonomous driving vehicles. The secrets that they use in that development are among the most prized secrets in industry, as Tesla is now the world's most valuable company. Tesla is, by many accounts, closest to a final production version of it.
Zhang Guangzhi is a Chinese electrical engineer. He went to work for Tesla in China, working on autonomous vehicles, self-driving cars.
Now, within the company, only about 40 people had access to the autopilot source code. They were all hand-chosen, very carefully selected.
Cao is one of those trusted employees.
On the 3rd of January 2019, right at the end of a workday, he startled his colleagues by announcing that he was quitting. The next day, he revealed he was about to take a position at X Motors. Unbeknownst to Tesla Motors or his employer, on the 12th of December, he received a written offer for a job with X Motors.
While still employed by Tesla, Cao accepts the offer from X Motors, the same Chinese electric vehicle company linked to Apple's trade theft cases.
Apparently, in preparation of his departure, he began downloading the key files necessary for the autopilot software, some 300,000 files to his personal iCloud account. And repeatedly, through the remainder of December and going up to his last day of employment on 4 January, he was repeatedly logging in and clearing his browser history. He was obviously trying to remove a record of his electronic activity on the network. According to published reports, the former Tesla engineer admitted that he downloaded from the network the autopilot source code and then transferred it to his personal iCloud account.
The FBI has no jurisdiction in China. So Tesla sued Xiao for misappropriation of trade secrets. Not theft of trade secrets, but misappropriation of trade secrets. That case has been settled for an undisclosed monetary sum.
The case is settled in court on April 16, 2021. Xiao denies stealing any sensitive information. But according to his LinkedIn profile, he accepted a job as head of perception at X Motors, where he is developing and delivering autonomous driving technologies for production cars.
Ironically, in this case and its predecessor, the beneficiary of the code in both instances appears to be X Motors.
X Motors apparently cooperated with Tesla to do a forensic analysis on the trade secrets that Xiao had stolen. And they basically turned around to Tesla and said, "We don't have it. Xiao never gave it to us." No, I do not believe them. I firmly believe that Xiao Guangzhi misappropriated, stole it, whatever you want to call it. He took the trade secrets and he gave it to X Motors for X Motors' benefit. And we really have no idea what benefit Xiao gained from that. In my experience, working China for many years and being the legat in China, when you look at Zhang Xialong and then the Tesla case, the common denominator for all of those is X Motors, Xiaopeng Motors, which is the competitor for autonomous vehicles. And in my opinion, Xiaopeng Motors, sure. They're sending people out to basically steal the technology that they need to undercut the market on AV. But all roads lead back to the Chinese government as far as I'm concerned.
The American people are a great people. The Chinese people are a great people. The peoples of our two countries have always been friendly to each other. But owing to reasons known to all, contacts between the two peoples were suspended for over 20 years. Now, through the common efforts of China and the United States, the gate to friendly contacts has finally been opened.
Since its existence in the modern world after World War II, China's been playing catch-up. They have been seeking to compete on a global scale. They wanted to build a military, they wanted to build an industrial base, but they also know that it's cheaper to steal technology and steal finished prototypes of systems than it is to develop them themselves. The U.S. is the breadbasket of technology and innovation and research. As a result, we became one of the primary targets and sources of information and developments. An example of our benign view of China was in the late 80s, it became clear that China had stolen the secrets to the W-70 nuclear warhead, which was the neutron bomb.
This is a plot and a supposed conspiracy that on the face of it has just about everything. Communist China, in theory, stealing virtually the entire menu of the US nuclear arsenal, compromising the Allies' nuclear weapons across the globe, including Britain's Trident submarines. The People's Liberation Army in Beijing, again in theory, close to deploying now a nuclear missile whose design draws on stolen American secrets.
People's Republic of China has stolen classified information on every currently deployed warhead in the US ballistic missile arsenal. The PRC has also stolen information on the neutron bomb, which the United States has not yet deployed.
They have a version of the F-35, which is almost an exact copy that was stolen. They rob the United States of its research and intellectual property and then use it to the advantage of their own companies. In the modern era, they've transitioned to a much more aggressive espionage campaign against the United States, a whole of society attack in which they're stealing American wealth, jobs, and endangering our national security by virtue of the information they're stealing. And it ranges from human spies to cyber and everything in between. It's a comprehensive threat.
In 2013, the Chinese Communist Party under President Xi Jinping launched a roadmap for global domination.
China is currently targeting industries based on two things. Can they add to China's economic might? Second thing is they're looking for technology that can aid their defense structure. Anything that can be used to give them a head start. China spies very differently than the West. 98% of all their intelligence collection is through something called actuarial collection. It's flooding the West with very smart Chinese immigrants. They come to this country, they do well, they put roots, they graduate from schools, and many of them end up in prestigious positions in university, throughout academia, certainly in industry and defense industries and emerging companies.
One effective program is called the 1,000 Grains of Sand.
You can sort of look at it as like a jigsaw puzzle. The 1,000 grains of sand theory means that China is very willing to send out hundreds of thousands of people throughout the world to get information and intelligence and technology that they want. So it means that they can send someone to countries all over the world and then bring back one tiny little piece of technology. We really have no idea what they may be doing because one person may be in South America looking for a specific piece of technology, whereas another person may be in the United States, and then another in India. And then they bring all those tiny little pieces of intelligence and technology back to China so that then they can focus on developing and reverse engineering that technology so that they undercut the market.
What that means is that they would use information gathered by students, legal travelers to the United States, researchers, diplomats, and they'd each go and gather information in the course of their visit to the United States, take it back and weave it back into a tapestry.
People know if they develop and bring technology to China, they'll be supported by the government.
We received information that an individual named Zhang was interested in exporting syntactic foam, which is a certain type of technology, to China.
Dr. Zhang moved to the Midwest of the United States from China in 1990 to study engineering. By age 54, he is a naturalized U.S. citizen, married with 2 children. He's also a professor at Texas A&M, while teaching remotely at the prestigious Harbin Engineering University in China. Dr. Xi has several businesses. His newest venture, CBM International, is a startup developing syntactic foam.
We looked at the technology, and syntactic foam is one of those technologies that is really important to the United States and that no one's ever heard of.
It was a material that provides buoyancy in a wide variety of applications in the oil and gas industry and also in military.
It gives our submarines a key advantage over the submarines of other countries because it allows them to dive deeper and it allows them to be quieter. It's also used in our latest stealth destroyers because it's porous, so radar goes through it instead of bouncing off of it.
There are only 3 companies in the world who produce it, and one of them is a multinational billion-dollar company based in Houston, Texas, called Trelleborg.
There are export controls on syntactic foam. It requires an export license to send overseas to certain countries, and China is one of those countries.
China's goal is to have certain products and technology made specifically in China. Syntactic foam is one of them.
We knew we had a technology that was of interest to China, and then we started delving into what was happening in Houston, what Xialong was interested in, and how far along in the process he was.
The FBI obtained search warrants for Dr. Xi's emails and are shocked to discover that CBM is already in possession of microspheres, one of the most important ingredients for syntactic foam. When used in something like military submarines, microspheres do the work of keeping the material from breaking under pressure. Trelleborg had spent 40 years making this technology, yet somehow, CBM figured it out in just 1 year.
That sort of changed the nature of the investigation for us from something that was export focused to something that was theft of trade secrets, economic espionage focus.
More surprising, Dr. Xi goes directly to Trelleborg, offering them a joint venture opportunity. CBM will produce the microspheres in China if Trelleborg agrees to share the rest of the technology on the foam. When they receive a sample a few days later, Trelleborg is shocked to find the product from CBM is just as good as their own.
We knew we had a situation where we needed to move as quickly as we could. We set up an undercover operation to give Xialong and CBM an opportunity to demonstrate their technology and attempt to sell it.
Dr. Xi and his employees believe they're presenting to the Trelleborg team, but they're actually speaking to undercover FBI agents.
It's actually stuffed with synthetic foam in the middle, so it's actually...
It was much more than we ever expected, because every project they showed was for the Chinese government or for the Chinese Navy. And then in the middle of it, they kind of realized maybe we shouldn't be talking about this. So Xialong says, well, we try not to work with the government and the Chinese Navy, and we follow all U.S. laws. And then our undercover was like, wait, so you did all this for the Chinese Navy? And, you know, then they were like super awkward and uncomfortable, and they were like, no, like, that's not what we meant. So then 5 minutes later, they all got arrested. So it was a good undercover takedown.
The following investigation reveals China had initially put aside tens of millions of dollars for the technology they hoped would allow their military subs to descend to 1,000 meters. When Chinese researchers tried and failed, they turned to economic espionage.
The real reality is that true power is defined by your economic might. And so it is much cheaper to steal proprietary information, where it's regarding trade secrets, processes, developments, than it is to spend the billions of dollars to develop it. And many of trade secrets that are stolen have a military advantage as well. It's what we call a dual-use technology, and America is hemorrhaging trade secrets.
Dr. Xi had been recruited by China and bankrolled $3 million. With that money, Xi opened CBM International. Instead of developing IT tech on his own, he targeted Trelleborg employees with access to R&D, reaching out to them on LinkedIn, offering higher salaries through funds from China.
I need a job. I made a mistake.
They were able to recruit 2 former Trelleborg employees who had access to the trade secrets that they eventually stole. They got enough trade secrets to the point where they couldn't quite mass produce the entire syntactic foam product, but they were able to make the key ingredient of it.
Dr. Shi then offered Trailborg a joint venture deal with his company in China for the very same product they originally stole from them.
This is a really rare case where we can trace the economic espionage and theft of trade secrets all the way back from the Chinese government through many intermediaries to the subjects in the United States.
We stopped them from acquiring that extra technology where they could mass produce on a large scale.
Although the FBI is able to thwart the attempts of trade theft in the case of CBM, they warn of a rising tide in corporate espionage.
Our advice is be careful. Protect your key data, protect your trade secrets, and just understand that it's the Chinese government's long-term strategy that they want to monopolize all of these industries, which means they want to eventually put you out of business.
China's looking at us, and the reality is, do they really need to fight that hard against us, fight that hard to gain primacy over us? Not really. All they have to do is sit back and watch us do it to ourselves. And that's really what we're doing. We're not paying attention as we should be.
Pittsburgh Corning Corporation's flagship facility is situated in Sedalia, Missouri, a small city in the heartland of America. It's a facility that operates 24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
Our manufacturing facility is 2 hours away from the closest major U.S. city, so you'd think you're safe there. And you would think that nothing was going to happen there, especially from people from out of the country. How would they even find us out there? But they did.
The company manufactures cellular glass insulation under the trademark Foam Glass and recently made significant breakthroughs in their formulation. A few months after announcing they'd been opening in China, they discovered some uninvited visitors in their facility.
They just walked in. So when we confronted them, we dismissed them out of the plant, and we dismissed it to a trespassing violation. So we were definitely going to follow up with local law enforcement on a trespassing violation. But we also had a security consultant at the time. He said, call the FBI.
We started our investigation on a complaint call from the United States company that complained that they had 2 Asian trespassers that came into their factory. They had toured the factory and filmed the location for an undetermined amount of time. We went to their location, investigated, found out the identities of the 2 trespassers, and then found out that it looked like they could be involved in the industry that this U.S. company is in.
As the FBI investigated, it unfolded more clearly. We had contact from the same gentleman at our corporate headquarters. He actually called and said he was interested in investing in the company. He wanted to come and get a tour.
The tour is rejected, but a few weeks later, an ad is published in a local newspaper looking for a U.S. engineer with specific formulary knowledge to go to China and start up a new business.
From that ad, we decided to conduct an undercover operation. Once we got into the details about the extent of the engineering knowledge that our undercover employee would need to have, it just made more sense for us to borrow a U.S. company employee that already had that knowledge. And we could instruct them and assist them with the undercover operation.
That was probably the part that concerned me the most because it was dealing directly with the safety of one of our coworkers. And in this situation, we did have an employee who was willing to do it. Through the work with the FBI, the coaching was there. All of the specifics were put forward to allay those fears.
We started an email exchange in response to that newspaper classified ad. Right off the bat, once we submitted the resume of the employee, they were very interested. As a matter of fact, they were not questioning any of his credentials. They wanted to hire him and have him come back to China to tour their potential plant within a matter of weeks. We needed to slow them down to sort of discuss how this would play out, and also meet with the company to explain exactly what the potential operation could be. The idea was that we would lure them over here to exchange money for this company's proprietary and trade secret information. So we arranged for the following week that Jili Huang was going to have other business here in the United States, and he agreed to come and meet this employee.
Jili Huang is the CEO of Ningbo Oriental Crafts Limited, with 200 factory workers to manufacture promotions products for exports to the US and Europe. A few weeks later, he's at a Kansas City restaurant with his translator named Chi.
So we set it up to where they met at a restaurant. We mic'd the employee up. We instructed him and gave him certain clues. We had certain words. Right off the bat at that restaurant, they were very interested in the information he had to provide. They were very happy to pay $100,000 and wanted the exchange to happen right away.
The undercover employee agrees, but says he'll have to return to the facility in order to get everything Huang has requested. They agree to meet the next morning and exchange the trade secret information for the cash.
Come in. Oh, this room is nice.
I was trying to rest. Oh, go ahead and sit there.
Okay. Have a last long night.
Let's put this down here. We're going to need light here in a minute.
Yeah.
So how was your evening?
Yeah, very nice.
Very tired. Very tired. Long night. I was able to get everything that was on the list. Everything. I have 2 discs.
The employee needs to confirm that the men are fully aware that what they're doing is illegal.
Lot of security. Yeah, again, you know, I could get in a lot of trouble, but I think we'll be okay from what I did last night. You guys got something for me this morning?
Yeah. So you will show us the...
I will show you what I have after you show me the money.
Okay. So the door is security?
Yes. Don't worry about the door.
In reality, the FBI are just outside the door waiting on a signal to come in and make the bust.
This. Now, understand, this is the formula for the glass. This is secret, it's confidential, and you understand that, right? So when you hide this in your luggage, you need to make sure that nobody can see. But this talks about how much, this is the secret right here. How much of these we put in.
Stand up. FBI, you're under arrest. Stand up. Stand up. Turn around. Stand up. Turn around. Turn around. Here. Stay right there. Put your hands behind your back.
45-year-old CEO Jili Huang and his 31-year-old employee Zhao Guangzhi plead guilty to conspiracy to steal trade secrets for the purpose of opening a plant in China to compete with Pittsburgh Corning.
This U.S. company is considered an industry leader in the material that they make. It took them 20+ years to develop that specific trade secret information. If they were able to reproduce that product in China and reship to the United States, the company estimates within 3 to 5 years that they could potentially lose jobs and be out of business.
It was scary how persistent they were and how they did not care that they could be caught at any time. Obviously, these people walked into our facility, and yes, we saw them there and we questioned them, and the story had a happy ending. But any other time, it could have been missed and could have been too late. I'm here to tell you that the attack is imminent, and it is aggressive, and it's relentless.
We've now reached the point where the FBI is opening a new China-related counterintelligence case about every 10 hours. China is engaged in a whole-of-state effort to become the world's only superpower.
So right now, the estimate from the FBI and the China Economic Council is approximately $400 billion to $600 billion a year is being stolen by the Communist Party of China. Just from what we know, prosecuted. Just from the Communist Party of China, just from the theft of trade secrets and intellectual property. $400 to $600 billion a year. So what does that mean for you and I? That's about $4,000 for each of us after taxes.
China's focus is more long-term. They look 100 years into the future, whereas the United States, for instance, we look 4 years into the future, from one administration to the next, from one presidential election to the next, whereas China's focus is much, much longer.
Xi Jinping has one goal in mind, to be the leader economically, militarily, and socially in the world. From a geopolitical perspective, his goal is to be number one. I would say from an economic perspective, that's where the rubber meets the road. With investment and money, it becomes a superpower.
But I do try to impress upon people who talk to me about China. Normal Chinese people are just like us. They just want to make a living. But just like any other government who wants to gain an economic primacy over, another country, they're going to do what they can to spy, to steal technology. I think the future of espionage looks exactly the way we're seeing it now. China wants to have economic primacy, and they want to be the economic powerhouse in the world. But it doesn't necessarily have to be focused on China. The other countries are trying to gain an economic edge as well, and so they have their own spying techniques. Spying is thousands of years old. We're still doing it today. We're just doing it differently.